I'd like to call this meeting of Lakewood City Council for Monday, September 16th to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Barth. Councilmember Boki. Councilmember Brandstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Moss has been excused. Councilmember Simpson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Whalen. Present. Mayor Anderson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Now, would you all please rise with me in a moment of silence in honor of our men and women serving overseas, followed by the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We now move to proclamations and presentations. First item of business there is a business showcase recognizing New Gangnam Barbecue and Mr. Jesse Jin, owner, as our business showcase. Mr. Jin, would you please join me at the podium? Thanks for coming. Well, it's always a pleasure to recognize Lakewood businesses, especially small businesses that kind of are the backbone of our economy. I particularly enjoy the breadth of restaurant choices we have in Lakewood, given our great diversity and given the fact that we have one of the largest Korean American communities in the country. It's particularly apropos that we recognize a Korean barbecue organization or business here in Lakewood. And I would note that the former mayor of Tacoma, Marilyn Strickland, would always mention to me when she came to Lakewood for the Pierce Transit Board meetings that though her mother was Korean, she was very disappointed in her town of Tacoma that she had to come to Lakewood to get decent Korean barbecue. So from new decor to changing menu offerings, New Gangnam Barbecue owner Jesse Jin is committed to making his Korean barbecue restaurant stand out. A former sushi chef who lived in Los Angeles, Jin has a hands-on, food-focused management style. He collaborates closely with his chef, always looking to balance traditional with original. Those looking to push the culinary envelope may want to try the stir-fry octopus or stir-fry intestines. All-you-can-eat customers cook raw meat, seafood, and vegetables themselves on tabletop gas-fired grills. As is customary in Korea, banchan or side dishes are also served. These smaller plates include traditional Korean dishes like kimchi, fish cakes, cucumber salad, and radish kimchi. Jin changes the banchan daily to always have something new for customers. Located at 9104 South Tacoma Way in the northern end of the city's International District, New Gangnam Barbecue is open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Jim also recently opened a second Gangnam Barbecue restaurant in Lacey. Because of the focus on family, dedication to providing the best Korean barbecue in Lakewood, and the entrepreneurial spirit, the City of Lakewood City Council recognizes Gangnam Barbecue as its September 2019 business showcase. Now, would you all join in giving Mr. Jin and New Gangnam Barbecue a round of applause? It's my pleasure to present you with this recognition, invite you to say a couple of words, and then we're going to have a photo op.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this place. And I don't have that much thing to say. Actually, Taco Mayors was my customer too. Hopefully everybody can stop by my restaurant. They're not just like a common restaurant. It's a kind of historical. This is more than 10 years, actually more than 15 years business. Former Korean president was our restaurant before too. but that time it's not my restaurant, it's from the other. But there's a very historical. One is the interior and the very traditional too. So hopefully everybody can stop by and enjoy our food. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, come up here and we'll take some pictures. Thanks, Ben. The next presentation is in some ways backwards, but in a very enjoyable way, because the City of Lakewood is receiving and the Kiwanis Club of Clover Park is doing the presenting. So I'd like to invite Mr. Mike Dara of the Kiwanis Club of Clover Park to join me at the podium, and we'll bring up the cast of thousands in just a minute. Sir, the microphone is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Mike Dara, and I'm the treasurer for the Clover Park Kiwanis Club. And with me, I have Rachel Adler, who is our current president. And for the past year and a half, we have had a project whereby we raised money to buy brand-new playground equipment for the Lakewood Kiwanis Park. As you can see up on the board, that is what the park will look like when we're through with our installation, which is going to happen on September the 28th. And at this time, I would like to present the city with a check for $70,000, which is the amount that we have spent for the playground equipment to put into the Kiwanis Park.
It's wonderful, thank you. And I understand that they accept non-Kiwana volunteers to help with the installation. Is that correct? So yeah. Some of my fellow Rotarians want to come down here. We'll encourage them to do so. Okay. So let's go up front and council come down.
Yeah, can we bring our club, all the blue shirts? Hold those down.
You there? Hey, good to see you. How are you? How's everything?
Good.
musical chairs.
Trouble with the chairs?
Yes. Got to keep between the navigational beacons. Let's see. We now move to the public comment section of our agenda. That's when any member of the public may comment on any issue of interest to the city, whether or not it is on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Yellow light comes on at 30-second warning, red light when your time is finished. Please identify yourself by name and city of residence, such as John Simpson, Lakewood, Washington. Tonight, the first person who signed up is Mr. Dennis Haugen.
Dennis Haugen, Lakewood, Washington.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Mr. Glenn Spieth.
Glenn Spieth, Lakewood. I just tonight wanted to thank you all for your support of the Lakewood History Museum, the Historical Society, and we had quite a turnout on Saturday night, and it was a bit of an effort to get moved on the 10th and be able to open on the 14th. So most of us are taking a little bit of a break, although we still got a lot more to do. So, but thank you for your participation and your support, and we'll keep going. Thank you.
The next person who has signed up is Bethany Dodd. Is Bethany Dodd still here? That's all the people who have signed up. If anyone else wishes to speak, please come forward. Does anyone else wish to speak at public comment? If so, please come forward. Seeing none, I declare public comment closed. We now move to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of August 26, 2019. B, motion number 2019-52, reappointing Jason Gerwin and appointing Mike Dara to serve on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board through September 19, 2022. C, motion number 2019-53, appointing Youth Council Member Abel Alvarez to serve on the Lakewoods Promise Advisory Board for the 2019 to 2020 school year. D, ordinance number 716, ratifying the vacation of a portion of 87th Street Southwest right-of-way bounded by Durango Street Southwest and the Sound Transit Railroad right-of-way. E, ordinance number 717, relating to the final assessment roll for Local Improvement District 1109, Panatone Woodbrook Development, setting October 17, 2019 at 10 a.m. as the date and time for a hearing on the assessment roll, assigning the City of Lakewood hearing examiner as the officer to conduct the hearing on the assessment roll. And F, items filed in the office of the city clerk. 1, Lakewood Arts Commission meeting minutes of August 5th, 2019. 2, Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 21, 2019.
Thank you. Is there any item that any member of the council wishes to have removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
It's been moved by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Mr. Whalen, that we adopt the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the council?
No, Mayor.
Move to new business. Is there any new business? Motion number 2019-54?
Yes.
Madam Clerk?
Motion number 2019-54, authorizing an execution of an amendment to the contract for services with Pierce County, increasing spending to the amount of $350,000 regarding road and traffic maintenance services.
And for this item, I'm passing the gavel to Mr. Whalen. I will not participate in the debate or vote on this due to my employment position as Pierce County.
Very good.
And I would note that my position is different than Mr. Bulkey's, because in my direct area of responsibility, I would review this contract on behalf of the county, and I have already delegated that to someone else.
Ms. Dodsworth.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor Whalen, City Council members. Since incorporation, the city has had a contract with Pierce County, almost like an on-call or scheduled contract to provide a variety of services. Early this year, we expanded that contract to make sure that we could provide the coverage or had the right amounts listed in the contract so we could do a more robust striping program, and we've used them for street markings and other services. So currently we have a gap in service with staffing on our signal program and streetlight program, and so the county has the skills and the ability to do that for us, and they're willing to come in and help us with that program as we look at a long-term solution. So we wanted to make sure we had the capacity in the contract to meet the expected work program that we may have between now and the end of the year. And the funds are appropriated in other program areas to cover those costs, so we're not asking for an increase in funding or allocation, but we're looking for the ability to make sure we can get the work done. So this is an amendment to a current contract that we have. It's adding $100,000 to that contract. Not that those funds would necessarily all be spent, but again, just provide that capacity in the contract so that we can get the work done that's necessary to keep the city of Lakewood safe.
Very good, and I assume that that would be for the 2019-20 biennial budget?
This will, once that you amend the contract and it becomes a $350,000 contract, then that would carry over and it's automatically renewed every year, so that we would have the capacity in that contract to do the work.
Very good. Any questions? Do I have a motion to adopt motion 2019-54? It's been moved by Councilmember Barr, seconded by Councilmember Simpson, that we adopt motion 2019-54. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion 2019-54 has been adopted. Thank you.
Now move to motion number 2019-55, Madam Clerk.
Motion number 2019-55, authorizing the execution of an employment agreement with John J. Caulfield as city manager effective January 1, 2019.
Thank you. Entertain a motion.
I move to adopt motion 2019-55.
It's been moved and seconded. I would note that a scrivener's error in the contract which was sent out with the agenda has been corrected, and that the base compensation level, which remains constant with 2018, is $185,000 a year, both in text and in numerically. They didn't match before. Is there any further discussion? Like just, Mr. Whalen.
I just want to point out that the renewal of the employment agreement between the city manager and the council comes after some in-depth review of a self-evaluation which reviewed the significant work that has been done over the past year and the very significant accomplishments by the city manager and his staff in achieving and executing on council's goals. I believe the employment agreement just mirrors the council's consensus that this city manager has done an outstanding job for the city, and we are pleased to have him for not just the additional year, but that's all we get to do for tonight's contract for the long term. So thank you.
Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add just a little bit to that. I found it significant that last Saturday evening during the opening of the Colonial Plaza, that our city manager was singled out by Congressman Heck for his signal work in making not only that plaza, but a lot of things in this city go. So Jason, or Deputy Mayor, I heartily concur with your remarks, and it does give us a chance to publicly recognize the value of our city manager. Thank you.
Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I would note that of the 280 cities and towns in Washington, you know, only about 45 actually have a council manager form of government, and that we have been extremely fortunate to have Mr. Caulfield, who amongst his peers is really regarded preeminently and has created some stability for us over the years that he has been here that has not been experienced by the majority of those other cities and towns that have this sort of government set up to be able to go and do that. So I think that both our evaluation of Mr. Caulfield as doing, first of all, an excellent job of managing the affairs of the city and of supervising the internal operations, but also of the external outreach in making the city had to have an impact more broadly that has resulted in both prestige to the city, but also real value to our citizens to be able to go and do that. And so, you know, having a contract that includes some incentives to have him continue as our city manager is extremely appropriate.
Thank you. You know, we put this on the regular agenda as a matter of transparency. From the comments that you've heard tonight, I think you can safely glean that we don't believe there's anything to hide about Mr. Caulfield's performance. It has been exceptional. We did increase his compensation by adding $5,000 to deferred compensation. That was the only increase in compensation this year. And that is in keeping, and actually it's a micro tick lower than the base rate given to, as a percentage given to unrepresented employees of Lakewood. I'd also note that, from Mr. Whalen presented, I was absent, Mr. Whalen presented me with a plaque that had been given. It says to the city of Lakewood and has my name on it. This is about the Complete Streets project, the Colonial Plaza. And although every once in a while you get your name on a plaque or the city gets recognized, really the one who's shepherding that effort forward is Mr. Caulfield as the Chief Administrative Officer of the city. And so we are glad that our policies from time to time are actually accomplished. If they fail, it's not for lack of trying, it's usually for lack of money. And we're happy to have Mr. Caulfield there with his finance background stretching our dollars. So thank you, John, for all you do for the city, and we're happy to recognize this in open session instead of trying to slide it by the newspaper. So with that said, we move to reports by the city manager.
We got to pass it, don't we?
Excuse me, we have to pass it. We have, any further comment?
We don't need to vote.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
It's not about abstaining, but.
We now move to reports by the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. First up, I'd like to call up our Assistant City Manager for Administrative Services to give you an update of our financial situation through second quarter 2019, which, bottom line, all very, very positive. Ms. Kraus?
Can I just end the report there then? So through the second quarter's report, it's really not much different from what you saw for the first quarter. Sales tax, gambling tax, and camera enforcement revenues are up, while utility tax, development services fees and permits, municipal court fines and forfeitures, and state shared revenues are down. On the state shared revenue side, the reason why it's down is because we're doing a better job with high crime. So reduced high crime, less high crime funding. In the general and street fund ended second quarter with ending fund balance of $8.9 million, of which $4.8 million is set aside for the ending fund balance reserves, and the remaining is earmarked for expenditures in 2019 and what we've projected through 2022. In terms of revenue increases, sales tax increased by $662,000 compared to 2018. Retail trade increased by $290,000. And motor vehicle and parts dealers is part of that retail trade. That increased by $180,000. Construction increased by $330,000, which we typically consider as one time. And services increased by $50,000, of which $50,000 accounts for, restaurants account for $40,000 of that $50,000 increase. And then compared to the 2019 year-to-date estimate, sales tax is up by a much larger amount, $1,090,000. And this is really due to, not budgeting for what we're not certain we'll get. So this is consistent with our financial policies and being conservative. And as part of the mid-biennium budget adjustment, we will be taking a look at the revenues that are up and down, and what I've shared with you in the last report is there are going to be some revenues that are increasing while some revenues are decreasing, and somehow they will offset. Gambling tax increased by $124,000 compared to 2018. We're seeing increases in 3 of the 4 establishments, and compared to 2019, year-to-date estimate gambling tax is actually up by $253,000. Actually, gambling tax revenues totaled almost $3.2 million in 2018, and this is compared to a 5-year average of about $2.8 million. Camera enforcement fines increased by $67,000 compared to 2018, and $119,000 compared to the year-to-date estimate. Activity in the school zone and Steilacoom and Phillips increased cameras camera revenue. So we've had some cameras that were out, and then we've had some construction that required the cameras to be off. In terms of revenue decreases, we've seen utility tax consistently decline. Compared to 2018, the decrease is $36,000, and compared to the budget, it's down by $173,000. Phone and cellular activity continue to decrease, and here we will be looking at an adjustment to true up what we believe the revenues will come in at. Development services, permits, and fees decreased by $615,000 compared to 2018, and decreased by $296,000 compared to the year-to-date budget estimate. And part of the reason for this decrease has to do with major permit activity in January 2018 for the Springbrook Apartments. Fees were about $185,000, and valuation was at $22 million. Normally, the city doesn't see this type of activity being issued during the winter months. The city still has very large projects pending. It's really just a matter of time. And in your packet on page 161 is a listing of permit activity that are in the planning stage, the pending and issued permits along with their evaluation. So I asked the question on how much we can anticipate in revenues as a result of these valuations. And it's really difficult to estimate what that revenue will be because it really depends on the type of permit and other factors that go along with that. So while we're not seeing the increases in revenue, the building division has experienced a substantial increase in residential remodels and additions and commercial tenant improvements. These projects do not generate the type of revenues that you would normally see with large projects. In terms of cost recovery, per the financial policies, the recovery ratio goal is 85%. We've budgeted 86%, and for year-to-date activity through the second quarter, recovery is at 70%. But if we step back and take a look at the recovery ratio from the year that council adopted the 85% recovery, the average recovery for all of 2016 through 2019 second quarter is 87%. So within a period of time, over a period of time, we are meeting the target. And then I also want to highlight the other area that we have cost recovery for is parks and recreation. The budgeted and goal is 45%, and through second quarter, they've achieved 48%. Municipal court fines and forfeitures decreased by $11,000 compared to 2018, and decreased by $57,000 compared to the 2019 year-to-date estimate. I'm also proposing an adjustment be made during the mid-biennium to reflect the activity that we're seeing. However, I will not be proposing any adjustments for the 2020 year. Municipal court is experiencing increases from infractions and citations as a result of the city's motorcycle patrol and rental housing safety programs. So those, just from a revenue standpoint, we may be seeing additional increases there. Also, as you've seen in the past reports, hearings have increased, and while the increases affect the various departments, including the city attorney's office and court, those types of hearings do not necessarily generate revenues. So we will be revisiting that once we see how 2019 ends up and what types of activity that we're seeing for 2020. So this concludes my presentation on the second quarter report. I will be back on the 21st of October to review the proposed mid-biennium adjustment, the revised 6-year financial forecast, and the proposed 2020 property tax levy.
Mr. Wolke.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Kraus, page 74, jail services, and we're already for the year at $475,000. We have a budget of $700,000. $475 would put us at $950, which is way over. We had some discussions the other day about costs, but could you specifically talk so far this year, what's the issue here about being that far over?
So our city attorney and our police chief have both looked at this because I've also asked the question on what is causing that. And it appears to be just an increase in the number of bookings.
Okay, so no relief in sight? I mean, we're missing by 20 grand a month now. Is it a change in policy?
It is not a change in policy, is my understanding. Sounds like it's just purely just an increase in the number of bookings.
That it? She's trying to say something.
Ms. Wachter.
Thank you. Councilmember Boki, members of the council, we did discuss this with the police department, trying to figure out, because it might be some kind of sentencing that the city was recommending or something like that. The police chief, in talking to me about it, says it is purely an uptick in bookings. He did not associate it to a particular reason, and it hasn't been pared down to a particular program involved or which jail it's in. We can do a deeper dive, which of course we expect to be doing when we see an uptick like that. But right now, that's the information that we have. It's not sentencing, it's booking.
Okay. And then just a general question on the revenue side. Any warning signs here for us? It sounds like sales tax is great, the top line number, but it's still construction related to an extent.
It's construction, but we are seeing some one-time activity. So like in the motor vehicle parts and sales, we've also seen that last year. So we will continue to see one-time increases, or what we consider to be one-time increases, but we're also seeing just increased activity in what we would assume to be ongoing, such as the food services, the restaurants. But as in terms of indications of where we're going to be, it seems like in the review, even since last year, we're seeing the similar trends in the major revenue categories. On the expenditure side, the budgets are pretty tight, and we're seeing, if you look at police, they're over on their budget. They have some savings in various line items, but it's their jail that's causing some increases. In our parks department and our public works, we actually have some savings, and those savings are due to internal service charges. And the interesting thing there in the internal service charges is if there are claims and we haven't received the reimbursements from insurance, we have to charge them an internal service charge. And then the year that they actually get it, because it could take some time, we actually give them a credit. And through the first 6 months, we're seeing some savings in those, primarily through those insurance reimbursements. But really nothing that's really stand out as being any indication.
Okay, thank you.
So my overly simplistic look at this, on the revenue side, year to date, we're $1.25 million over budget. Expense side, we're $250,000 under budget, and we have $1.5 million to the good versus budget on NOI. What are the anticipated negatives that affect that? And just a summary of what parts, what will eat away at that and keep it from being still at the bottom line at the end of the year?
A couple of things. So on our property tax, we get a certain amount of property tax. Some years we'll receive more than what is actually budgeted to come in. They might be from delinquent taxes. There may be some timing difference. The utility tax looks like it continues to decrease, especially in the phone and landlines. Development service fees, unless something picks up, I'm anticipating that we're not going to meet the target. And the state shared revenues, unless we get a distribution with the new fiscal year, that will continue to decrease for this year. And fines and forfeitures is kind of difficult to tell right now, but based on statewide trend, I would anticipate a continuing decline. So those are our major areas.
But it's erosion of certain revenue sources as opposed to anticipated unusual expenses.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Ranstetter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Kraus, I'm looking at page 89 of our packet, which I think is page 33 of your report. And there is a discussion there about cost recovery for development services. And it sort of accurately describes the intent of the council. There it said, where it says, in setting cost recovery levels, the city shall clearly establish and articulate performance measurements to ensure that there is value for cost. And I guess that I'm really wondering, how well are we doing with the establishing and articulating performance measures as we're looking ahead to try to actually make this a reality in 2021? Because when I look on page 147, where there is some performance data basis on community and economic development, there are some areas that talk about low percentages of targets, particularly underneath the permitting type that relates to construction. I mean, there's some 20% of, only maybe 20% of the target, 33% of the target, 26. And then in the second quarter, while that is approved to, some 70s and 60s, there's, I guess, are we really able to articulate and with straight faces tell our customers who are paying these permit fees that they're actually getting value for what they're paying, or are they getting the value that we intended for them to get? And do we have some way of deciding that, are we going to make some adjustment in targets to meet the validating in both transparently to customers, but also in our own minds that not only are our permits priced for value for cost, but is the value actually being delivered, one aspect of value being timeliness. And I realize you're not the community development director,
Yeah.
and so I just would, perhaps what I'm saying is that as we look at a quarter from now and we look at this, some analysis about how are we doing on the value for cost goal would be interesting leading into 2020, since we want to accomplish it by 2021.
So just my knowledge of this, I would say this is more of just data, reporting on data. I don't believe that we've gone through the process of really truly analyzing it and taking a look at the targets that were set and what the delivery is. So it is something that we should be looking at for the next quarter.
Yeah, I guess I would say it's nice to make the math come out that we're going to reach 85%, but we don't want to reach 85% without also providing the value that we think that 85% should. And I think we have some work to do in that regard.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think we recognize that Ms. Kraus is reporting on the quantitative evaluation of cost recovery as opposed to the qualitative evaluation of the service provided. But there is a point there that we all recognize. Any other questions from Ms. Kraus? Back to you, Mr. Caulfield.
think everybody's aware, next year is census year, 2020, and we've been participating in conversations with our Pierce County Auditor, Julie Anderson, who's kind of serving as point countywide on getting the word out and taking the lead regionally there. So as this continues, we'll be kind of piggybacking on her initiative in terms of what she's doing, specifically focused on Lakewood, particularly in some of our underserved areas here in our community to make sure that those folks are counted. We're also going to be launching our own web page to allow people to gain access and information about Census 20. We'll also be using our various communication tools to get the word out as well. And again, we'll be working with the Pierce County Auditor's Office and Julie Anderson on that. And just want to thank her for taking this on, because I've worked in 3 counties. This is the first time in my career, actually, we've had kind of that spirited leadership coming from a county. So I tip my hat to Ms. Anderson for doing this. Veterans Day event, I know the last few years, actually 4 or 5 years, we've had our own Veterans Day event. I think as this body remembers, that was spearheaded by the Remembrance Boulevard along I-5 by one of our state legislators a number of years ago. You know, the challenge we face is the last couple of years, the attendance has been, has not been as great as it has been in previous years. However, one of your meetings, which is where this room is actually packed, is the evening that you read your Veterans Day proclamation, which this year will occur on November 4th. And so what our team is looking at is perhaps expanding that part of the meeting to allow for a more proper recognition of Veterans Day and inviting some other folks to come in and speak and things along those lines. Also, we're looking at perhaps using that evening as an opportunity to dedicate the new bricks, the memorial bricks out at the Veterans Memorial right out here in front of City Hall. To date, we've been able to sell or collect donations on 149 of the remaining 242 that were out there. So we're in the process of getting a contract to get those names and alike engraved out there in advance of November, so we can do that. So I just kind of want to give you a warning order on that, and we'll have some more information here in the near future in terms of how that could all come together on November 4th. The Pierce County Library Board meeting, they meet, I think it's once a month. Their next meeting is actually going to be Wednesday, October 9th, and they're going to hold it here in Lakewood, at the Lakewood Library. They want to get a tour of the library and kind of just see the layout over there, and that'll be at 3:30 in the afternoon. Our city clerk actually did offer these chambers here to them, but again, they wanted to get out and see the library directly. They also asked that they wanted to extend an invitation for all of you to come and meet with them, or at least attend their meeting on that afternoon as well. So just wanted to give you a heads up, and we have, I think, if not put it on your calendar, we will put it on your calendar. The Nisqually tribe, they recently issued a call for projects to apply for their annual grant funds, and so we're looking at their criteria that they have identified to see if there's anything there that we can apply for. If you recall, last year as a follow-up with the meeting that this body had with their tribal board, we submitted a couple of applications for some art projects, so we're going to continue to have those discussions with them to see if that's something that they would, again, be interested in at least considering hearing from us about. So more to follow on that. On the economic development front, I know I mentioned last week that the quote-unquote former QFC property had sold. We now know that the total cost was $2.5 million, which was actually almost half of what they had been asking for it for a good number of years. They had been asking $4.9 million or something, so that was a bit of a surprise. Members of our team actually met with the new owners last week. They came out here. They were surprised on a couple of fronts. One was that people just come onto their property and just park stuff and leave it there. They actually confronted this one individual who was trying to leave their trailer there, and the guy was like arguing with the new owner saying, "No, you don't understand, I'm just leaving it here for a few days. I'm just storing it here." And the new owner's like, "No, you can't do that, this is my property, you can't be storing your," and so he was a little perturbed, shall we say. he's looking at trying to secure his property as he tries to figure out what he wants to do there. Right now, in the short term, they're focused on the hearing, the abatement, the dangerous building abatement hearing that is scheduled from a week from Thursday on the 19th of September in front of our hearing examiner, which is, we're looking for the hearing examiner to rule that the building needs to be abated, needs to come down. The new owner has made comments that they have a potential idea of trying to reuse it based on our analysis and our understanding of the lack of structure that exists within that building. We think it needs to come down. But again, he wants to go through the process. He can do that between now and September 19th. Matter of fact, he's had some folks out there cleaning up and doing some other things beginning this weekend and this week as well. But at the end of the day, we'll see what the hearing examiner decides. And then just long-term, as he looks out on redeveloping that property, we've been having conversations with him about what our community's vision is for that area, including our downtown plan and, the type of increased density he can get on that property and the like. I mean, it's a good-sized piece of property, so hopefully he will take advantage of that. So I'm hoping in the near future more to come on that. On the development services front, we're going to begin requesting that folks move away from paper copies and submit things electronically. That has been well received by most folks who come in and work with us. But for those applicants that can't submit digital copies, we'll actually scan it for them as a service so that we can help spearhead and kind of move along the review process. Also, the Pierce County Council looks like is creating a task force to focus on ending veteran homelessness, and it's through their Continuum of Care organization. And long story short, they asked a representative from the city of Lakewood, given our affiliation with JBLM, as well as the number of veterans in our community. So our special projects planning manager, Tiffany Spear, is going to be sitting on that task force. They're on a kind of a short timeline to get a recommendation back to the Pierce County Council by January of 2020. If you're driving around the city and you're wondering why the corner of Steilacoom Boulevard and 87th has been scraped, like me, because that has been an ongoing code enforcement issue for a number of years, I asked, and actually some really good news. Dutch Brothers is going in there, so I know that I thought they were interested in the other part of Steilacoom Boulevard, but apparently they're also interested in the part of Steilacoom Boulevard down by Fort Steilacoom Park. And so a new Dutch Brothers will be going in there. It's been permitted and everything, so you can look to see that coming out of the ground here in the near future. So that'll be a nice complement, actually, to Fort Steilacoom Park and the million-plus people that visit there. Right across from the Chinese restaurant.
Okay, across from who now?
Yep.
There was a house.
There's a couple of houses there, yeah. Also, our economic development manager, Becky Newton, reported that Tacoma Pierce County EDB is going to be featuring Lakewood in their next teamwork newsletter. And so I saw a draft of what Becky put together, and it looks really, really sharp. Again, another positive reflection on Lakewood, on who and what we are regionally, and also looking statewide as well. So I want to thank the EDB for that. The milfoil treatment, some additional milfoil treatment is occurring out at American Lake. I believe it's tomorrow, if not tomorrow, later this week. There's a couple of areas, one that they had purposely didn't treat, which was over by the Tacoma Country and Golf Course because of some water intake issues. So they're going to be applying there. And then there was an area that they thought they didn't need to apply, which is by American Lake Park, actually to the west of American Lake Park along the northern border. And they saw some milfoil over the summer has actually taken root. And so they're going to apply some treatment there. So just wanted to give you a heads up if you hear anything going on at American Lake, that's probably what it is. Last week, myself, our police chief, Mike Zaro, and Jim Sharp and one of his staff from West Pierce Fire and Rescue met with representatives from Pierce County to talk about their Mobile Community Intervention Response Team, or MCIRT. And you might remember me mentioning this to you previously. And the description of it sounds very, very familiar. It's very similar to our behavioral health task team, where we have a dedicated police officer and a dedicated mental health professional dealing with folks who really need help out in the community, some of our underserved population and folks and things like that. Our program's been up since 2015 and comprised of 2 people. Theirs has been up and running, theirs being the county's, has been up and running since 2017, and it's actually, it's funded by the county. It's a $750,000 annual program. I was told it's built into the county's baseline budget, and they contract with a firm called, I'll get it here in a second, Comprehensive Life Resources. And so they were at the meeting as well. So what we learned is MCERT has actually been doing work in Lakewood in support of West Pierce Fire and Rescue. Because the fire folks, they deal with a lot of, folks who call on a regular basis or just calling for basic medical attention and things along those lines. However, they have not been in a position to deal with other first responders, such as police officers. They communicated they just received a $300,000+ grant from Primera, a private foundation grant, to expand their services and add additional people, again, through this company, Comprehensive Life Resources, to expand into Lakewood and other cities, including the town of Steilacoom. So right now, and so they kind of asked if that's okay. I was like, yeah, that's great, sure. It's not costing us anything, and again, it's another resource, not just to fire, but also police. The grant is only for a certain period of time. I think it runs through June of 2020 or maybe June of 2021. I can't remember the exact date. But they said, once that time period is up or a little bit before that, they'll probably want to come back and have a conversation with us about whether or not the city and the fire district wants to contribute financially to continue that service in our community. One of the things that we had a discussion about was, okay, the data, okay, what are we getting for that investment? Because, for example, our behavioral health task team, we can, we can measure that. We measure the success in terms of the number of people we touch and, the assistance that they're provided and the safety net that we provide to them. So that's something that we'll work on with them. They were very familiar with our behavioral health contact team. As a matter of fact, they have had contact with them out there. The other item that we pointed out was our rental housing safety program. Again, another safety net that the city has. When we described that program to them, they had not heard of that. They were very, very interested in learning more about it because a lot of times we run into people through the rental housing safety program that need help, but we're not really quite sure where to point them. And MCERT, based on what we heard, could be a resource. And so the person who was heading it up, she said, I'd love to talk to your team about that. So Mr. Buer has already reached out to her, and our team is going to meet with their team to see what we can do there. So again, a deeper safety net for the Lakewood community for those who truly need some help and some assistance. And we'll keep you appraised of how things are going there. But the good news at this point in time, it doesn't cost the city a penny. But I'll just give you a courtesy heads up, probably more to follow on that in the next year or two. One of our leading citizens, Andy Gurdon, did something really, really nice. She did something really, really nice. So Community Healthcare is celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. Actually, in October, they're having a big wing-ding on, I think it's October 30th or 31st. And so they're seeking nominations to honor health heroes. I think they're kind of focused on individuals. But Andy took it upon herself, and even though it might not fit their basic criteria, to nominate the city of Lakewood, given all that the city has done in the 23+ years since we have been incorporated. And, and what she submitted, I thought was just absolutely fantastic, talking about the 1% of the general fund that we dedicate every year, or the collaborative organizations that we have founded, Lakewood Promise and things along those lines. Also, our youth council and forming that, the rental housing safety program and our behavioral health contact team, and she just really did a nice job. And that's not she didn't have to do that. And I just want to publicly recognize and thank her for that, for doing that. And so if you see her, you might want to just say thank you. That was really nice of her to do that. She didn't have to do that. If you've been driving by Lewis North or North Fort over on JBLM out the back, you might have noticed that there's some white buildings, old pre- and World War II era buildings that have gone away. Yeah, so they're demolishing them. And by this spring, they'll all be gone except for 2 or 3. And apparently, they're all made out of asbestos. So, yeah, of course. And so, it's been a bit of an eyesore for a number of years over there. Some of you may remember that those buildings were used primarily for, a number of schools that existed back in the day on Fort Lewis, but also the ROTC used to be up here. And so if you went through ROTC there, you might want to get checked for, what's the disease that you get with asbestos?
Mesothelioma.
Yes, I can't even pronounce that, yes.
Don't pick at the insulation.
But they're all coming down. They're all coming down, and then, of course, that'll be an opportunity for, JBLM to expand other, other activities over into that area, whether it's logistics or barracks or whatever their needs are there. I know, I hear you. Yeah, and the nights we spent on Firewatch, right? Yes. LTAC, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, met on Friday afternoon. I apologize. I think I told some of you they were meeting on Thursday. I got my days and my dates mixed up. But long story short, I think, as you know, they had funding requests totaling $847,250. And they essentially approved or recommended to this body what everybody has asked for, except for one of the city asks, reducing that from $50,000 to $30,000. So basically, they're recommending an appropriation of $827,250 to this body. Given the process that we go through with LTAC, it will come in the number of days that have to go by between when LTAC meets and when it comes to this body. It's been docketed for your review as part of your November 12th study session, and then if the council's so inclined, for you to take action at your next regular meeting, which is November 18th, because the 12th is a Tuesday, because Monday the 11th is a holiday. As far as your council calendar, really just 3 things. This Thursday, there's a couple of events. Forterra is having their South Sound event over at the Greater Tacoma Convention Center. And then that afternoon, later that afternoon from 5 to 7, the Wellstone Apartments is having their grand opening event. And of course, many of you remember that as the that mobile home park that was over there on Fur Acres, where they had the raw sewage spewing everywhere. So it's quite a change in terms of the development that exists over there. And then on Friday afternoon, the Clover Park Technical College is going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony for their new building, the Advanced Manufacturing Technology Building. And that building is being named in honor and in memory of former President John Wallstrom. And so that'll be on Friday at 3:30 p.m. over at Clover Park Technical College. So with that, that's my report, Mayor.
Questions for the city manager? Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Caulfield, you mentioned the milfoil treatment, doing some supplemental treatments. But with regard to that lake management piece over there, what's the status now of Camp Murray participating? Understood that they decided that they no longer wanted to participate or were allowed to participate financially?
I think on Friday, actually, I got a quick update on that. But long story short, we believe Camp Murray is wrong in terms of their read of the RCW. So they're kind of pushing back a little bit on wanting to pay. But we're going to be meeting with them to square that away, Councilmember.
Okay. And I know that we have some vacancies on the LTAC. Given the nature of the vacancies, do we still have the right balance of providers and lodgers?
We did for this past Friday, and so I think the advertisement is for the next round, I guess next year as we move forward. It's my understanding.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, If there are none, then we'll move to council comments. Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few comments, and I know probably a number of us will comment on the Motor Avenue opening on Saturday. I've mentioned it to a number of folks that actually I think the whole thing, once we got people in there and using the space, it turned out better than what I had anticipated. It looks great, and it works really well as a venue, and some folks were very complimentary in just how it was put together and some of the things that we may not notice, like lack of curbing, right, where so people who are disabled can get around pretty well. And I mentioned that to one of the guys from that what a great job I thought they did on one of the members of the design team. So I think a lot more of you probably have to say about that. MCERT and MOC-T, that they call the other thing, there was a presentation at the Human Services Committee at the County Council, and I sent that information to you from that meeting. And so you'll want to, I think the MOC-T also goes into Lakewood. It's more of a mental health-based, kind of a crisis-based intervention. They do come into Lakewood. The MCERT has been coming into Lakewood. So I urge you to look at that information when the city manager sends it out. One of the things that I noticed tonight, it wasn't budget related, so to speak, but it was in the budget packet, was the use of My Lakewood 311, which still seems to be getting, this many years into it, is still at a pace that's faster than prior years. And I guess you could take it negatively and say, well, there's still all these problems. But I actually, when I thought about it, I really do think it's a positive thing. People use something that they think is actually going to get results. And I want to believe that they're using it when they see things and they're getting used to using it and they're getting used, hey, my sign's down over here, and they report it, and within a few days it gets taken care of, or the garbage gets moved, because a lot of them are garbage related still. And so I take that as a positive sign, but I didn't mention it as part of the, because I didn't, it really wasn't budget related. I do have a question for the city manager on the Wellstone thing you mentioned. They got a tax abatement from us, and I was wondering, but as part of that, they were going to give us a contribution to the park next door. Have we received that?
I believe they've already cut the check for that, as well as their share of the sidewalks as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next month, I'm scheduled to represent us at the Clover Park School District at one of their meetings to be able to go on. And so while it's still a couple of weeks away, if any of you have any input or things you want me to mention, please pass them on to me. But it also caused me to wonder, we have historically interacted with that, but that we've got a reasonably sizable number of students who are in the Steilacoom Historical School District. And additionally, the Steilacoom High School is right on the border with Lakewood, and as we are in a period of time of where there is a lot of interaction with Western State Hospital, I was wondering whether we would want to consider having a representative or someone, if not monthly, semi-monthly or quarterly, go to their meetings, okay? Particularly since there seems like we're moving into a period of time of when we're going to have some areas of do that, and that may well be something that we would want to take a look at, seeing if they would like that beginning in the new year to go on. I did also get a chance to attend the Complete Street Motor Colonial Plaza, Motor Avenue celebration. I am interested in what, over time and after we get the art and things, what the public is going to start to call it. But I thought that the event that was there and the use of the space showcased the potential of that that's going on. I think that anybody who was there that is perhaps interested in starting a business or locating a business within some of those vacant storefronts, that probably did some good for that to be able to go and do that. And has become the habit with city-sponsored events, it was well put on. I think it was adequately publicized and got a good turnout. The weather was reasonably good to be able to go and do that. And regarding Mr. Boke's comments about My Lakewood 311, I think that he's right that the fact that we see more of something on it is not necessarily a negative thing. It's the fact that it's a tool, and the metric there is really there are things that are now coming to the city and to the appropriate personnel in the city faster than they normally would. We're no longer needing a city staff person to find a pothole or to find something they'd be able to go through and do that. So I think that would be something that is an ongoing and growing success in terms of our goals of transparency, about being able to go and do that. And when I think about our vision and of wanting to say that Lakewood is known for an exceptional delivery of municipal services, My Lakewood 311 is a tool that is making that vision a reality, I think so, to be able to do that. And my last thought was the city manager made a reference to our, a year ago, having had a joint meeting and being hosted by the Tribal Council of the Nisquallies. That I think that we should look in 2020 of reciprocating, of looking for a joint meeting that we would host to look to be able to go and do that, because I think we continue to have joint interests, and we'd like to sort of look for a way to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Barth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. I attended the Lakewood Commerce, Chamber of Commerce, good grief, last Thursday. And one of the things that I noted was, and I want to say this publicly, Becky Newton, our Economic Development Manager, has her fingers in everything. She was recognized for many things at that meeting, and they did a film, a picture, and she was in, I don't know, 20 pictures. She just was everywhere. Every time you looked up, there's Becky doing something. So she's a good representative for the city of Lakewood, and I wanted to just publicly acknowledge that. Then I did stop at the FAB venue at McGavick Center, and I talked to several of the artists and authors, and it seemed to be well attended, although they were competing with several other big things that were going on either in Tacoma or Seattle. So they had some tough competition, but they seemed to be doing pretty well, and they were thankful that we cared enough to stop in. And then I don't want to just keep going on about the Colonial Plaza, but boy, oh boy, that was a tremendous event. And the old baseball saying, build it and they will come. We built it and they came. I saw smiles, laughter, people dancing out there in the middle. I didn't see you dancing. Flowers, food, tap dancing. But it was just a wonderful event, and just the fact that so many people were out there smiling. You mentioned Andy Gernon. Andy was there, and she said something to me about it just makes your heart smile, because it's a vision that many people had 20 years ago, and here it is. It's happening. So I'm proud to be a part of that, and I just wanted to thank all of you for being a part of it as well.
And we got the plaque to prove it.
Yes, we do.
Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I don't know that I can say much more about what's been said about last Saturday's celebration, other than at one point I was standing in the middle of all of that and not dancing, looking at the old Lakewood Colonial Theater and marveling at this perfect blend of the past with the present and the future. Because what I see there, and Mr. Branstetter said it, I see the potential. I see the future, particularly as I looked over at the old QFC building and I thought, that goes away and something good comes in there. We've got a very good center. There was one, however, thing that I didn't see. I walked down because I like to look at antique cars, and I didn't see John Caulfield's car there, and I was saddened. Yeah, I told you Saturday night before I left I'd get you, Mr. Consider yourself God. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering what award he's going to get at next year's car show at Summerfest. Mr. Whalen.
Well, thank you. I will start off with Thursday evening at Pierce County Regional Council. During that meeting, lasting about an hour, we went through the Vision 2050 letter that we all had a chance to review, and all of the comments and revisions made by the City of Lakewood, as promulgated and communicated by Tiffany Spear, were passed. So that was a good thing. So that'll move on forward in the process. And Saturday, we had the Colonial Plaza. We've heard lots of good chatter about that. I think it was a fantastic event, and I too heard lots of great comments and saw lots of smiles and people eating lots of good food. The feedback I received from several of the market vendors who were there included, gee, it would be great if we can move the market here. So that was a comment. People would like to see a night market occasionally there, so we can have some more music events. But clearly, if we don't plan for a continuum of periodic events, the luster may be lost. We want to kind of keep up the good work that we've done, and it doesn't have to be every week, obviously, or every month, but at least once a quarter we should really think about doing something there. And I also had occasion to go in and look at the new, almost ready to go Historical Society venue, and thanks to you, Glenn, and all your compadres there who put that together in short order. I thought it looked pretty good. I think there was a lot of folks that walked through and were, I think, pleased by the additional space to walk around. And once everything's kind of up on the walls and you have some other interactive stuff, I think it's going to be a really positive space for the museum for as long as you folks plan to be there. So I thought that was kind of fun. It certainly adds something to the mix to create some activity there, so that's a good thing. I will attend the grand opening of the Wallstrom Center this coming, I think it's Friday. And I was pleased to hear that Ms. Barth went to the Lakewood Fab event. I didn't get to go to that, and I'm sorry I didn't, but I heard it was pretty good. Anybody else get a chance to see some of the movies or go to the art? I know Dorothy Wilhelm was there on Sunday. It was in competition with a lot of stuff, so it made it challenging for me, but I hope the public enjoyed it because the folks who put it on put a lot of work into it. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Busy week externally. Monday was Pierce Transit Board meeting, which is relatively uneventful. Wednesday we had the 9/11 event here, which was fairly well attended. It has, and had the advantage of being brief, and got a number of compliments on that. It's good to have that, given the, as we mentioned with Youth Council here, the fact that this year's high school seniors weren't born yet. Later that day, I attended the mayor's roundtable on homelessness, and that was at on ending homelessness. That was in Puyallup, was very well attended. Virtually all the mayors of the county attended, and this is the third of 4 meetings, and some good ideas come out of that, not just retreads, but one of the things that I think was heartening to me is that there's a recognition that different communities are different and one size doesn't fit all. So in the time when people are saying, well, consolidation is good and maybe for administrative purposes, I think that may be the case. The imposition of one community's solutions on another may be trying to put a round peg in a square hole, and people recognize that pretty universally. So I think that was good. Friday, spent, that was Wednesday. Thursday, I made a monthly trip to Purgatory. I attended the Puget Sound Regional Council Transportation Policy Board meeting in Seattle. 2 hours up, hour and a half back, and sifting through the subject matter. The main focus of the meeting was voting on the for the advancement of rural and small town allocations to the general board, and Pierce County was awarded or will be awarded some things that make sense, recognizing, for example, that Eatonville, while a very small town, has need for traffic signalization and improvements through the middle of town, because that's how people get to Mount Rainier. They go right through the middle of town, so there are going to be some improvements there. Also a trail section between Roy and Yelm. So that was good. Probably even more important is that there is a task force of that committee that has been stood up to look at how next year's funding is allocated. And throwing themselves into the fray as volunteers from a prior meeting were County Council Chair Doug Richardson and DuPont Mayor Mike Quartz to try to influence that committee's decision on what the mix should be, how the formulas work, and the like. More to come on that. Part of the emphasis being collectively, along with some representatives from Kitsap County, going to make another run at military bases as regional centers. So we'll see that. Friday spent essentially the entire working day on the Lodging Tax Committee meeting. We actually have a 6-figure reserve carried over. Last year we pretty much wiped it out. We allocated what was current plus the reserve because we were funding the finishing the pavilion for Silicon Park. This year we had money in more money in the capital side than we could allocate to the one eligible program, and we did knock down a couple of things that we thought were over asking, but a couple of them that I would like to mention that we kind of rolling the dice on. I'm glad Mr. Spieth is here tonight. There was a larger request that came in from the Historical Society, and we recognize that in the past, a number of years ago, the Historical Society was virtually totally dependent on the city, and we'd ask that they make an effort fundraising and being more self-sufficient, and they have. And they've got a grant, and they've got some contributions and some memberships, and they made good progress in that regard. Their ask was pretty big this year, and seeing to some extent it's a one-time event. We granted their request, recognizing that they wiped out their reserves in the move, trying to move forward. And so we wanted to support that in our recommendation. But to some extent, that's a one-time deal, not a go back to being the principal funder. And with respect to the FAB, I didn't get to go there. We approved their request for an increase, and there was a good rationalization for that. They are, based on Ms. Barr's comments, I think they acknowledge the competition they have. They're moving the event to October, which they've done some research, and they found it would be a better fit based on a number of factors, not the least of which is no Puyallup Fair. No Puyallup Fair. And so they have some metrics that lead them to believe that it can be more robust and keep growing, and that's the best place to grow would be October. So they're moving to October, and we gave them a little extra money for next year, so presuming the council approves that. So that's a busy week. Mr. Whalen.
Just a quick alibi, so to speak. I forgot to mention, I had some really nice comments back from Senator Steve Conway and Representative Melanie Morgan, along with Congressman Heck, that they really appreciated the appreciation. And Senator Conway is often telling us that he doesn't often receive much thanks from some of the other jurisdictions, but he really appreciates what Lakewood has done, and that Lakewood appreciates what all the legislature does for the city. And I think we made a friend out of Melanie Morgan the other night. She was pleasantly surprised that she was actually going to be recognized or introduced at the podium, so that was a good thing to do.
Nice job.
Yeah.
All right. We have a need for an executive session. You still have that need?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, 10 minutes for review of pending litigation.
We will now recess into executive session for approximately 10 minutes pursuant to RCW 4231.10(1)I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. The council is not going to take any action on any matter coming back into session other than to adjourn. We are in recess.